the past few weeks, you know, plenty of bankers have been trotted out in the media to explain why they are worth it. The L'Oreal defence, time and time again, and to tell us how important their work is to the economy, how stressful is their workload, how they must be rewarded because they take these incredibly high risks. Now, I do wonder if the work of an investment banker is more important than that of a teacher, or if their work is more stressful than a nurse working in one of our major hospitals, or if their job is actually more high risk than one of our soldiers fighting in Helmand Province. I'm afraid I don't accept their value to our society is so great that we have to pay them these ridiculous amounts of money. Their sense of self-worth is utterly distorted, and it's an attitude that has been encouraged by the market forces that have come to dominate our society in the past 30 years. And what has been the effect of allowing the rich to be as rich as they like? The famous trickle-down. I don't know if some of you may not be aware of the idea of trickle-down economics. It's an old idea that came from Ronald Reagan. Basically, the idea was that if you allow the rich to get richer, then their industriousness will drive the economy, and wealth will trickle down to everybody in society. It's a brilliant idea, because instead of saying to the rich, you must pay taxes to show your sense of responsibility to everybody in society and to help those people less worse off than you, all the rich have to do under trickle down to make society better is get richer. That's why it was so popular. That's why the newspapers love it. 2 weeks ago, the National Equality Panel published a report that showed that the richest 10% in this country are 100 times better off than the poorest 10%. That's trickle down. That's what happens when you allow the rich not to pay taxes, when you allow corporations not to put in their pocket and help the poorest. And when people talk about the poorest 10%, you know, you always think of Frank Gallagher of Shameless. The reality of the poorest 10% in this country are old age pensioners. Something we'll all be if we're lucky. Their children living in single parent families. They're the people who are in the poorest 10% in this country. Not a few sort of dodgy spongers that were for always getting put to the fore. They're the people who are suffering because of the massive inequality in this country. And what has been the effect of allowing the rich to no longer express their responsibility to us all in terms of progressive taxation? A startling drop in the collective provision of education, of housing and healthcare that is genuinely damaging to our society. You know, the National Equality Panel showed that societies that suffer from greater inequality are also plagued by more children dropping out of school, by worse mental health among the population. Even the violent crime is higher in less equal societies. You know, it affects all of us. There's two types of inequality. There's the inequality that you experience because you're suffering from it. Your life chances have been distorted because of inequality. But there's a secondary inequality that we all suffer. All of us who live in society, who walk the streets, we all suffer from that secondary inequality because we don't, as a society, take responsibility for everybody that's in our midst. Now, the Tories are very fond of saying that Britain is broken. And if it is broken, it's been broken by inequality. We've lost that crucial connection between the aspirations of the individual and those of the community as a whole. Because, yeah, I mean, I believe that the individual is the most important component in society. I believe that passionately. But unless every individual is the recipient of collectively provided free healthcare, free education, decent affordable housing, then only the rich and powerful will get to express their individuality, and the rest of us will be exploited by them. And just allowing just even 1% of the population, and that's who these bankers are. They're not even in the richest 10%.
Mr. Bragg, can I just interrupt for 2 texts?
Yes, of course you can, officer.
How long is the intended?
No more than 10 minutes, so I have a plane to chat. I'll be gone. If you'd like people to move over a little bit, would that help?
Fine. You just stay off the road just a wee bit.
I did ask them that, officer.
That's lovely. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm standing here. The reason I'm standing here today is because there don't seem to be any politicians willing to take up this cause. Not just the cause of bankers' bonuses, but the cause of inequality. This doesn't seem to be a frontline issue in this country, and I believe it should be. I believe it should be a frontline issue. You know, I don't only want Alistair Darling to call the bluff for those bankers who say pay us our bonuses or we'll leave, because that's what it is. It's a bluff. It's a bluff. They haven't got anywhere else to go. You know, they're just trying to put one over on us. So calling their bluff would be a first step. But it's not only to call their bluff, but a politician willing to admit that the market is broken. That the market is broken, that the invisible hand of free enterprise, invented up the road by Adam Smith, across on the hills there, by Adam Smith in the 18th century, that the invisible hand of free enterprise, which was relied upon by Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair to reach into the darkest corners of society, has not only failed to make us all better off, but because of the workings of banks like RBS, it threatens to make paupers of us all. And what are we offered as a remedy for this? What are we offered as a remedy for the financial difficulties that we find ourselves in because of the banks? Cuts in public services. The hardest working people hit the hardest. And you know, there's no party leader, it seems to me, prepared to make the case for greater funding for the helping hand of the people, the helping hand that raises up citizen and banker alike. When the invisible hand of capitalism failed to lift an invisible finger to help the Royal Bank of Scotland, who did they turn to? They turned to the hand of the people, the caring hand of the taxpayer. The people's hand it was that reached out and saved them and their jobs and their livelihoods in their moment of crisis. The compassionate hand that holds the newborn baby. The guiding hand that teaches the child in school. The caring hand that looks after us when we're old and infirm. The steadfast hand that guards us while we sleep. I'm talking about the hand of the people, the helping hand that receives very little credit for its work and expects nothing of us except that we make a contribution to its work by paying our taxes. Now, of course, the irony is I stand here before you as someone who's refused to pay his taxes this year. But the point is, I believe passionately in paying income tax. I believe it's an expression of social solidarity, a means of making a contribution to the common good. Paying taxes is my way of recognising that in any society we all have some degree of responsibility for one another. Now, I'm not saying I love paying my taxes, and I'm not saying I wish my bills were a bit lower, but when this campaign ends, when either the RBS pay their bonuses or the Chancellor of Exchequer uses his veto, when this campaign ends and I sit down to pay my taxes, I'll think of all those public service workers out there whose wages my taxes make a contribution to. Why will I think of them? I'll think of them because they're worth it. Every single penny. I'll think of the children whose education and care I'm supporting. Why? Because they're worth it. I'll think of the families who need my support to get by. Why? Because they're worth it. And I'll think particularly of the previous generation who built and funded the welfare state, who supported my family with children's allowance, who paid for my education, who paid my dole money when I was in a punk band. I'll think of that generation who now in their old age turn to us for support. I'll think of the pensioners, among the poorest people in this country. Why? Because they're worth it. But I'll also think of the bankers. I'll think of them because in the past couple of years a large chunk of my taxes has been diverted from the intended recipients and instead used to bail out failed banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland. Stephen Hester said when he was giving evidence at the Common Select Committee that he was a prisoner of the market, that the invisible hand of Adam Smith forced him to pay these ridiculous wages. Well, I would argue that when you become too big to fail as a business, you are no longer in the market anymore. You are through the looking glass. The Royal Bank of Scotland is neither royal, nor is it Scottish, nor is it a bank anymore. It's a public service. It should be out there lending money to ordinary families for their mortgages and to small businesses to employ people. That's what we need from our bankers. Instead